All right, let's buckle up, because this is about to be a ride that'll make you see the next decade in a whole new way. I'm about to talk about why India is not just catching up, but about to overtake China as a global power. And I'm not talking about in some far-off science fiction future where people wear silver jumpsuits and fly to work in spaceships. I'm talking about within our lifetime, and it's already started. See, for years, the world has been watching China like it's the only heavyweight in the ring. They got the factories, they got the ports, they got that made in China stamp on half the stuff you own right now. But while all eyes were on China, India's been playing a whole different game. Quietly, strategically, stacking its cards, building not just muscle but brains, relationships, and resilience. And now, the quiet player just stood up from the table, slammed the cards down, and everyone realized, oh, they've been holding a winning hand all along. Let's talk about why this is happening. First, population. China had its one-child policy for decades, which might have looked smart back then, but now they're paying the price. Their population is shrinking. Fewer workers, fewer young minds, fewer soldiers, fewer consumers. That's a slow leak in the tire of a so-called superpower. India, on the other hand, is young. Over half the population is under 30. That's energy, innovation, ambition, a whole generation ready to push harder, dream bigger, and work longer. You give me a country full of young people hungry for opportunity, and I'll show you a country that's unstoppable. Then you got the economy. China built its empire on being the world's factory. Low wages, mass production, massive exports. But now wages are rising. Countries are pulling their supply chains out, and that China risk is real. Companies are looking around saying, where else can we go? Guess who's standing there smiling, offering skilled labor, democratic stability, English, speaking talent, and a massive domestic market? India. That's why you see Apple, Samsung, Boeing all shifting big chunks of their production to Indian soil. And this ain't just cheap labor anymore. India's producing world-class engineers, coders, scientists, entrepreneurs. The economy is diversifying into tech, services, manufacturing, even space exploration. Speaking of space, did y'all see Chandrayaan 3? India became the first country to land near the moon's south pole. That's not just a science win, that's a statement. It says we're not here to play catch up, we're here to lead. China's been making big moves in space too, sure, but India's doing it faster and cheaper. They're proving you don't need a $1 trillion budget to get results. You need brains, precision, and hustle. And let's talk about democracy. Yeah, democracy is messy, it's loud, it's chaotic, but in the long run it's a strength. China runs on top-down control. One man's decision becomes the country's direction. That might be efficient in the short term, but it's brittle. One wrong call and the whole ship tilts. India's democracy forces debate, forces adaptation, forces leaders to listen to the people or face the boot in the next election. That makes for resilience. It means when the world changes, India can pivot without breaking. Military power. Oh, don't get it twisted. India isn't just building software and satellites. They're building weapons that even the big boys respect. Hypersonic missiles, nuclear subs, stealth drones. And here's the thing, they're not just buying them, they're making them. Make in India isn't just a slogan, it's a strategy. It keeps the money in the country, builds jobs, and makes sure no foreign power can hold their defense hostage. Now let's touch the most underrated point, global relationships. China's playing the big boss in Asia, and that's scaring its neighbors. You got territorial disputes with Japan, Vietnam, the Philippines, India, you name it. They've built some alliances, sure, but there's a lot of fear there. India, they're working with everybody. They're in quad with the U.S., Japan, Australia. They're buying arms from Russia, doing energy deals with the Middle East, investing in Africa, helping small island nations with climate projects. India's building friendships, not debt traps, and here's something people overlook, the cultural power. Bollywood is watched in more countries than Hollywood. Indian food everywhere, yoga practiced in every corner of the world. Indian CEO are running Google, Microsoft, IBM, Pepsi, and the list keeps growing. This is soft power, and it seeps into people's minds without them even realizing it. When the culture travels, the influence follows. China's growth model has hit a wall: real estate crisis, youth unemployment, tech crackdowns, and aging population. And the worst part for them, the trust gap. Countries are starting to ask, do we really want to depend on China? India is stepping into that gap like a champion stepping into the ring when the last fighter's too tired to keep going. Now, does India have challenges? Absolutely. Infrastructure gaps, poverty pockets, political tensions, bureaucracy. Nobody's denying that. But here's the difference. India's solving these while still growing at the fastest rate of any major economy. They're laying down highways, building metro systems, expanding ports, digitizing government services, and bringing millions into the formal economy through UPI digital payments. This is transformation in real time. And let's be real, the world loves an underdog story. For decades, India was written off as the country of call centers and curry. But now they're showing up as the country of rockets, AI startups, military power, and economic muscle. They've gone from being the world's back office to the world's boardroom, and soon they'll be the ones setting the agenda. So why will India overtake China? Because while China was sprinting, India was training for a marathon. They built endurance networks and adaptability, and now that the sprint is slowing, the marathon runner is catching up and about to pull ahead. The signs are everywhere in trade, tech, demographics, defense, diplomacy, and culture. The shift has started, and if you're still looking at the world map like it's 2010, you're already behind. The question now isn't if India will overtake China. It's how the rest of the world is going to handle it when they do. When the world hits turbulence, most economies start gasping for breath. You see currencies fall, stock markets crash, factories slow down, and governments scrambling to find a lifeline. But India has a way of standing in the storm and still moving forward. That's not luck, and it's not magic. That's what we call economic resilience, the ability to take a hit, adapt, and keep growing when everyone else is shrinking. And when you look close at how India has built that resilience, you start to understand why it's not just surviving global downturn. It's using them to its advantage. First, there's diversification. See, too many countries put all their eggs in one basket. They rely on a single industry or a single export market. When that one sector takes a hit, the whole economy takes a nosedive. China, for instance, tied so much of its growth to manufacturing exports and real estate. When global demand slowed, when countries started pulling supply chains out, when property markets went bust, they felt the pain immediately and deeply. India, on the other hand, has built an economy that spreads its strength across multiple pillars: IT services, agriculture, manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, startups, space technology, retail, tourism. If one pillar wobbles, the others keep standing. That's like a table with 8 legs instead of 3. You can knock one out and the thing won't collapse. Then you've got domestic demand. This is a big one. India has 1.4 billion people and, more importantly, a rapidly growing middle class. That means even if exports drop because the global market is down, companies can still sell to Indians. They're not dependent on the moods of foreign buyers because they have a giant home audience ready to spend. In fact, during some of the worst global slowdowns, domestic consumption in India has cushioned the blow. When the 2008 global financial crisis hit, economies that were heavily export-driven crumbled. India slowed down, sure, but it still posted growth because millions of Indians kept buying homes, cars, smartphones, and services. That internal engine never stopped running. Another reason is the services sector. India's IT and digital services industry is one of the most competitive in the world. And here's the beauty of it: global downturns often push companies to cut costs, which makes them outsource more. And where do they outsource? India. So instead of losing business in a recession, Indian service companies often see an increase. It's like a counter-cyclical weapon. When others are hurting, this sector can actually thrive. That's why companies like Infosys, TCS, Wipro, and HCL still show healthy revenues even when Western economies slow down. Let's talk about agriculture for a second. Most big economies are post-agriculture, meaning they import a huge chunk of their food. When global supply chains get disrupted, food prices go through the roof. India, however, is one of the largest producers of rice, wheat, pulses, dairy, and spices in the world. Not only does this feed its people, it also gives it a steady stream of export income even when other trade slows down. Food demand doesn't disappear in a recession. People still have to eat, and that makes agriculture a built-in stabilizer for India's economy. And then there's the remittance factor. Millions of Indians work abroad in the Middle East, the U.S., Europe, Africa, and Southeast Asia, and they send money home. These remittances, which are among the highest in the world, act like a steady flow of foreign currency into India's economy. Even in downturns, people keep sending money to support their families, which boosts local spending and keeps small businesses alive. This is an invisible safety net that a lot of countries don't have. India's banking and financial systems have also been evolving in a way that supports resilience. After the 2008 crisis, India tightened regulations, improved oversight, and built stronger capital buffers for banks. So when shocks hit, banks aren't as exposed to collapse as they might be elsewhere. Plus, India has embraced digital finance in a way that few nations have. The UPI payment system has transformed transactions, bringing millions into the formal economy. This boosts tax revenues, improves transparency, and helps the government respond faster with targeted relief when times get tough. Energy is another piece of the puzzle. Many countries get crushed during downturns because energy prices spike and they can't cope. India's strategy has been to diversify energy sources. Oil from multiple countries, coal, renewables, nuclear, and to negotiate deals that lock in favorable terms. During the Russia-Ukraine crisis, when oil prices surged, India didn't just sit back and watch costs climb. They struck deals for discounted Russian oil, refined it, and even exported products to other markets. That kind of opportunistic maneuvering isn't just survival. It's turning a crisis into a business opportunity. One of the most underestimated parts of India's resilience is its entrepreneurial spirit. In downturns, a lot of economies rely on government bailouts to keep companies afloat. In India, you have millions of small and medium businesses that adapt on their own. If demand shifts, they pivot products. If supply chains break, they find local alternatives. That kind of grassroots flexibility means the economy doesn't get frozen in fear when things go wrong. You've got chai stalls adding mobile payment QR codes, farmers pooling resource to buy better equipment, local manufacturers shifting from garments to PPE kits overnight during the pandemic. This is resilience. Shifting from garments to PPE kits overnight during the pandemic. This is resilience from the ground up. Speaking of the pandemic, there was one of the biggest global downturns in living memory, and India's response revealed a lot about why it can keep growing when others can't. Yes, there were struggles, but look at the recovery speed. India ramped up vaccine production, digitized more services, pushed infrastructure projects forward, and saw record numbers of startups getting funded even in the middle of the crisis. While some economies were still figuring out how to restart, India was already pushing growth back into high gear. There's also the mindset shift happening in India's leadership and policy making. In the past, the country might have been more cautious, waiting for global conditions to improve before making bold moves. Now you see the opposite. They're using global downturns to push reforms. Labor laws, manufacturing incentives, infrastructure investment, startup policies, it's like they've realized the best time to plant seeds is when everyone else is too distracted to compete for the soil. The investment inflow story is another layer. Global investors are diversifying away from China, and India is catching a lot of that capital. Even when the global economy slows, India is seen as a safe growing market. That means it keeps attracting funds for factories, technology parks, highways, and green energy projects. This constant inflow fuels job creation and keeps the growth cycle turning when other economies are in retreat. Trade strategy also plays a role. India doesn't tie itself to one dominant trade partner. It spreads its trade relationships across multiple regions, the U.S., EU, Southeast Asia, Africa, the Middle East, so if one region faces a slowdown, others can pick up the slack. That's like having multiple streams of income. You don't go broke when one dries up. And perhaps the most critical ingredient in this resilience is scale. India is so big with so many layers to its economy that shocks get absorbed. In smaller economies, a disruption in one sector can spill over into everything else almost instantly. In India, there are enough buffers geographically, socially, economically to keep things moving. If one state faces a drought, another has surplus crops. If one industry slows, others pick up. That sheer size and diversity give India breathing space that many nations just don't have. You also can't overlook the psychological factor. Indians have been through decades of ups and downs, from currency crises to droughts to political shifts. That history creates a population and a business community that doesn't panic at the first sign of trouble. There's a cultural muscle memory for adaptation, a belief that even if things get tough, they can be managed. This is the same reason you see Indian startups born during downturns that go on to become global players. India's government has also been investing heavily in physical and digital infrastructure, regardless of short-term conditions. Roads, ports, railways, 5G networks, these are long-term bets that keep paying off. Even if global demand dips, domestic productivity improves, attracting investors and creating jobs. This forward momentum is hard to stop once it gets going, and it cushions against external shocks. And while many countries retreat into protectionism during downturns, India often does the opposite, striking new trade deals, inviting foreign companies, opening new sectors to investment. That creates fresh energy in the economy when others are stagnating. It's like running toward the ball while everyone else steps back. What makes this resilience so powerful is that it compounds over time. Every downturn that India survives without collapsing makes it stronger for the next one. Every crisis creates new systems, new skills, and new ways of doing business. The world sees that and it builds confidence. Investors notice, partners notice, and soon India becomes not just an economy that can handle trouble, but one